Welcome, everyone, to Ladder Daily Digest. We honor creators. Randy Bell has been on with Maven before to talk about the class action lawsuits are. And Randy's also appeared on Mormon Stories, and he's appeared on Mormonism Live and some other places as well. And most people in the Mormon Stories arena know Randy's story from that point of view, but we really don't know much about Randy's
expertise, experience, outside of Mormonism.
Like instead of clerical,
the resume.
Oh, my career? Is that what you're getting at?
CV?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So welcome, Randy, to the show.
Hey, thanks, Gene, and thanks, Maven. Nice to see you guys.
Yes.
So that's why we've titled the show, Who the Hell is Randy Bell? Because we're going to find out who he is, who his authentic person is behind the mask of being on the Mormon Spectrum podcasts.
I don't know. There's so many ways I think that I know. So first, I mean, we know you have a connection, not as a lawyer, but as an expert witness, which I think is also one of the topics that you've talked about before. In some really interesting cases, there's cults, there's real estate. You've also written a book, Post-Traumatic Thriving, which it's just really unique and diverse. And then of course there was your study about Dartmouth connections to early Mormonism, and that's what I should have been wearing, actually, was the Dartmouth shirt you got me. But yeah, so like where I don't even know where to start with all of these different things. I'll throw it to you, Randy. How did all this start?
I think the story starts in college at some point, right, Randy?
Well, it starts wherever you want to start. I mean, I went undergrad. I grew up in Fullerton, California. My high school, Troy High School, was right across the street from Cal State Fullerton. So I actually started my college at Cal State. But then after my mission, I went to England on my mission. I came back and some friends came over and said, we got a room for you up at BYU. And up until then, I had not really given BYU any thought. I was going to stay in California. And I went up there and I kind of bounced back and forth, but I ended up getting my undergrad degree from BYU. So that introduced me to Utah and Utah Mormons. And here's a fun fact. I taught at the MTC. I was one of those guys on the BYU campus that wore the white shirts and ties and name tag and taught it.
So you went to England. So you taught English at the MTC then?
Yeah, my son says England, that's the place where they speak a different language, but you can still understand them. So,
yeah.
And so what was your degree at BYU?
Finance and accounting. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with that, but it just sounded good.
Sounded like
that's
money
how I was with anthropology.
So then after BYU, I went back to Southern California where I felt a little more comfortable. BYU was, in terms of the whole thing, it was kind of extreme. I don't know if I fit in very well there.
Couldn't wear your flip-flops and your surfing gear.
Yeah, there was an uptightness about it, and I made a lot of friends that I still have to this day and ski with annually up at BYU. But in terms of I was all for the church. I was gung ho, but it was a different brand. I don't know how to explain it, but it was kind of extreme.
Yeah. I'm guessing you might have been a bit too liberal too, potentially.
Well, growing up,
maybe in California.
Most of my friends weren't Mormon, and I was very accustomed to talking to people with all kinds of backgrounds. BYU was wound pretty tight, at least the people I ran into. So maybe it's different today. I don't know.
Yeah.
And so then where'd you enroll?
Well, I started a career I started getting into computers. This is when the internet was actually before the internet, but when the Apple II and the Apple IIe were coming out. And frankly, it was too fast paced for me. And so I decided to get into real estate. I went back to school at UCLA and got a graduate degree from UCLA. And I took an extra semester of every single real estate elective that they offered, like literally every single one. And I wanted to be a real estate developer. Real estate's a little slower and more my style. The computer thing I got into was just too fast, and everything we developed was obsolete, 3 weeks later. So it got frustrating.
Were there any books you read, or did you have anybody that you hobnobbed with that was a tycoon that you wanted to emulate, or buddies, or what were you thinking of being, some real estate tycoon that had been modeled either in the media or just on your own?
How did you get interested in that?
I just liked it, and the people that invested in my computer stuff made their money in real estate, and it's like, that's more my style. They obviously do well. I worked at a firm in Beverly Hills. I guess, the only tycoon I met was, I was literally on the corner of Wilshire and Rodeo, right between Beverly and Rodeo. So I was kind of in the posh part of town in LA. Bruce Willis was becoming a thing. I saw him crossing the crosswalk right outside my office. He had a big fur coat on. He's twirling around. I thought, that's just...
In LA?
Yeah. He looked ridiculous. But Sharon Stone, if you remember that movie Sliver, and what was the other one? Indecent Proposal. What was it?
Yeah, there's the movie
Sharon
where
Michael Douglas. Yeah, she came in my office. She was going to invest some money with us, but her criteria were, we had a lot of investors, so her criteria just didn't work with what we wanted to do. But I asked her how she was doing, and she proceeded to tell me for about 2.5 hours how she was doing. But that was the closest to a tycoon, I guess.
Yeah.
She must have been attracted to you, I think. And you just
I don't know about that. I don't know about that. The guys in the office were saying, "Hey, ask her out." And at the time, I was going. Remember that TV show Dallas? Yeah, I was.
JR.
Yeah, I was dating Mrs. Ewing's lingerie model.
Wow.
Oh,
Can't make it up.
Wow.
And I thought, well, I think she was, probably still is, better looking than Sharon Stone. So I was kind of, and at the time, Sharon, I'd never really heard of her. So she did her big movies right after I met her. Had I known how big she was going to go, I don't know. Who knows? It's all what ifs.
So you got into real estate. Yeah.
Yeah. I got into real estate and kind of kicking forward to the career I've got now. I was getting I inadvertently earned all the coursework to become a real estate appraiser. And I wasn't appraising houses. I was appraising more like shopping centers and hotels and malls and industrial complexes. And I liked it, but I didn't love it. So I thought, well, I'm going to go to law school. So I took the LSAT. I got into law school, and I thought, I don't know if the world needs another lawyer. And I was confused about what direction to go. And I had this epiphany in the pool. And I thought, what if I take my skill set of what increases value and I turn it upside down and I look at what diminishes value, what loses value? Things like, at the time in California, we had the Northridge earthquakes, we had wildfires, we had the LA riots. So like Bank of America called me up to go appraise a shopping center, and I drove out there and it had been burnt to the ground in the riots. And I had to call them. Back then, cell phones were like big bricks. And I had to call them and say, the shopping center is gone. It's been burnt down in the fire. Nobody could believe it. So I had this interest, I don't know if it was a fascination, maybe it was, with disasters, whether it be fires, earthquakes, landslides, floods. We had a lot of that kind of stuff in California. I just thought that would be really interesting, and it would also be very challenging. I'd be breaking some new ground there. So I got into that, and then it really exploded with some of the big cases.
Yeah, I remember taking a real estate class, and I heard that if a developer comes into an area and say buys an old shopping mall, the fact that they were going to have to demolish the old, say, strip mall, that lowered the price of the real estate. And I thought, how could having something that's there cause it to be have a lower price?
Yeah, demo costs. Yeah, demolition costs a lot of money.
I have a question. This might kind of come out of left field, but I find old buildings and abandoned ones really fascinating sometimes, and especially it's when they're sitting and they're not being used. I've wondered about that. Why can't this building be turned into, into housing or, into something, why does it seem like, some of these buildings can sit for so long? Because typically you'd say like it's the market, right? Or the market should determine the price. So if it's been sitting there forever and nobody's buying it, why is that? Are they not lowering the price enough? And maybe I am also curious, maybe it's probably a lot more difficult to update old abandoned buildings versus just tearing them to the ground and starting over. But I don't know. That's something that like my imagination just kind of goes wild sometimes when I see these kinds of buildings. And so do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, Maven, the thing is that it's usually cheaper to tear the old stuff down and just rebuild new than deal with all the old not non-code conforming issues. But it's super cool to go into retro buildings. I'm the first to admire and appreciate that.
Yeah.
I'm living that right now because I just bought a new house in Laguna Beach. It was built in the 1960s. So I'm going out of my way to preserve elements that have this old vibe, this old Laguna Beach vibe. On the other hand, some of the stuff like the popcorn ceilings and other stuff, has got to go. So I'm trying to preserve at the same time of, turning it into a cool house. So
that's right.
We'll see
the
what
fake
happens.
wood paneling has to go.
Yeah. But then I'm kind of happy as a clam. Nobody knows who I am, and that's fine with me. I kind of reached my goal of getting into something more challenging and new and innovative and pioneering. And then came along a case you might have heard of, the O.J. Simpson crime scene. And Lou Brown lived in Monarch Beach, which is literally neighbors to the community I live in, where I live now. And I worked on that with Lou Brown, and nobody knew about it. It was just between kind of Lou and me. I got to know the family and everything, and the trial was going on. And then I called an appraiser in L.A., George Ryan, who I knew quite well. He had appraised the Menendez brother. Remember the two brothers that shotgunned their parents in Beverly Hills on Elm Street? So he worked on that property. I asked George about it, and he told me, all the information I needed to apply to the O.J. Simpson case. And George's wife, Ruth, wrote a column for the LA Times called Hot Properties. It was all the celebrities moving in and out of LA and everything. And Ruth called me, and I know Ruth. She's super cool. She's since passed away, sadly. But she says, "Hey, Randy, what's going on with the OJ place? George told me you're working on it." I said, "I am, Ruth, but everything I've seen is stuff that's already been covered in the media. I saw where Nicole sat down her ice cream and it formed a ring by the garage, and I saw, of course, the walkway, and a few things, the candles by her bathtub and everything." I said, I really don't have much to tell you. And so we chatted for a little bit.
You can't peek into their life any more than everybody else has, right? The voyeurism is sort of like gone already.
Can we back up a little bit? Because so you're in this, you're appraising because they're trying to sell the house, or you're trying to determine the value? Is that?
Yeah, good question. Lou didn't know what to do with the house. He just it's famous now. Is it worth more money? Can I sell it? And if I sell it, do I sell it for more? He just genuinely did not know what to do with the property. And I'd only done one crime scene before, but I told Lou, I don't know the answer either, but let me figure it out. So I hit the books, I did the research, called people like George Ryan that had done other famous crime scenes. And then I had the unpleasant task of telling, Mr. Brown, hey, fame doesn't make it more valuable, and it's going to have probably a discount associated with it, which it did.
Yeah.
And so that's why. And
that became the subject of the article that the lady wanted to write.
Yeah, so Ruth wrote an article, and I subscribed to the LA Times, and I went out in the driveway and picked it up, and I'm kind of going through it, and I said, let's see what Ruth has to say. And I'm reading her article, and then there's this literally one sentence. It said, appraiser Randall Bell reported, and it was some totally innocuous, boring, benign thing. I don't even remember what it was. It was so unnoteworthy. And I'm not kidding. The whole world called. The Wall Street Journal called. Reporters came from Japan. CNN invited me on in the studio over and over again. Everybody from A to Z. my life just turned upside down from that one sentence in the LA Times. I can't make this stuff up. And
Yeah,
I was really shocked that you said
the
anything.
house would be lucky to sell at 79% of its current value. And that
it
became
was
the
more
thing
boring
that
than that. And then a little while later was the Heaven's Gate case, and I got retained in that. And I mean, it triple exploded. I mean, one of my tasks, I managed the whole property, was to take the media through. There's a 2-page spread in People magazine that features my career, and that was actually, the picture was taken in the Heaven's Gate mansion. And the Wall Street Journal, again, it just kept exploding. And then I had no idea the World Trade Center was my future. Jeffrey Epstein, Sandy Hook, gee whiz, JonBenet Ramsey. It just goes on, and hundreds of cases that are really big. But the Nuclear Claims Tribunal, where they did nuclear tests on the Bikini Atoll. I mean, really fascinating cases. But to me, some of the cases that are unknown are actually more interesting. I'm kind of oblivious to the media.
Randy, I wanted to go back a little bit. So,
yeah,
had you put out your own shingle where this was Randy Bell Esquire, or were you working with the company at first? At what point did you become your own thing?
Well, I was doing my own thing when I worked with Mr. Brown and JonBenet Ramsey and I'm pretty sure Heaven's Gate. But then a Wall Street Journal came out, and you know the little drawing they do of your face and everything? It's kind of cool. Yeah, so that article came out, and the guys over at Pricewaterhouse read it, and they made a really great offer. So I went to work for Pricewaterhouse. Then they merged with Coopers and Lybrand. I kid around, but it's really not a joke. It was more of a hostile takeover than a merger, in my point of view. So I worked there for a while after the merger, and then 2 partners and we quit and started our own thing. And then,
what did your business card say when you worked for the accounting firms?
Oh, it would say
appraiser, estimator. It didn't say master of disaster yet. Is what I'm getting to.
Yeah, it didn't say master of disaster yet. I think the LA Times did an article. In fact, I know they did. They did an article where the very first sentence was Randall Bell is the master of disaster, and then that name took off. I told my wife, just call me Master for short. That didn't go over.
That's right.
So it just exploded, and it's still exploding today, to this day, with these environmental spills, oil spills, Hurricane Katrina, Hurricane Harvey, just on and on.
So at first, are you compiling like boxes of information on your own, articles about other things that are happening? Are you accumulating just your own stuff from the things that you're working on?
Yeah, we have a database in our office. We call it the RED report. RED is an acronym for real estate damage. Later, I went back and got my PhD and socioeconomics. So it's kind of an overlap between sociology and economics. My dissertation was on Hurricane Katrina, disaster-ridden neighborhoods, and how homeowners and property owners react to that. So it's a very narrow, weird niche. I'm the first to admit it, but it's actually, it keeps about a dozen people in our office very busy.
So what's the name of that office that you have now, or your company?
Landmark Research. We're in Southern California, but we work all over the country. I was just in the state of Washington, going to Florida, just all over the country.
So there's lots of jobs that you get that are not headlines.
Oh, most of them are not, but a lot of them are $1 billion, hundreds of millions of dollars, at issue type of cases. They're very, very large, but they're not necessarily picked up by the media.
Do you want to tell about any? Because you did say some of them were more interesting. I don't know if you are able to, or if you wanted to give an example, or.
Back in the day, lead and asbestos were big contaminants and, concern a lot of people. Today, the chemical of concern, if you will, is PFAS. It's the Teflon chemical. It gets into drinking water and household water. That's the EPA just came out with new guidelines that are very, very strict. So that's kind of the cutting edge stuff going on today around the country. Of course, there's the train wreck in Ohio, which I worked on. I can just now talk about it. The case just got settled. While the cases are active litigation, I can't even talk about them. There's other very big cases I'm working on, but I can't divulge them until the attorneys I work with file their cases. So
I had asked you a question about Epstein. I remember I thought a really simple, easy one, and you were like, Maven, I've signed an NDA that's like an inch thick, you know, like so I remember like, okay.
I got to be careful with Epstein because I've been to the island, I've been to all the properties, Paris and Florida, New York, New Mexico. And that's about all I can say. I just got to be really careful. It's still a very, very sensitive topic.
Maybe you can answer this question: Epstein, heaven or hell?
I don't judge.
You can't even do that question.
I cannot judge that kind of thing. I got a lot of opinions and stuff, but I'll have to wait to another day to share any of that if I ever.
Makes sense.
At some point, you go from just you to hiring people. Do you remember what that was like? Like, who should you hire and what their duties would be? How are you going to grow your business that way?
Well, I'm really big into systems theory, and the easiest example of systems theory, and by the way, one of the best examples in the business world, and I'm not kidding, of systems theory is the Mormon Church, which I was actually going to write a book once called McMormon, because the textbook classic case of systems theory is McDonald's, where you drive up, one person takes your order, then you go to the window, one person takes your money, and then you go to the next window. One person's making the shakes, one person's the French fry captain, and then off you go. So it's very systematized. Some people say
I was thinking more on the lines of multi-level Mormonism is what I was thinking.
there you go. But the Mormon Church is very systematized, which is intended to be a compliment. It's really remarkable in terms of its organizational structure. In spite of what we might think about other aspects of it, as an organization that can generate revenue, it's amazing. My firm is very small, but we have one person that does the GIS mapping. That's a mapping software for jury exhibits. We have one person or actually a couple that do multiple regressions, which are statistical modeling. We have one person that does graphics for courtroom exhibits. So we kind of have a system which allows us to get involved in very, very large cases and get them to, considering their size, pretty efficiently. So that's kind of how we are organized. And I did that very deliberately from my study of systems theory.
Does a lawyer call you up and say, hey, give us a pitch for why we should hire you compared to somebody else?
A court expert.
An expert.
Yeah.
And you show them your things, your bells and whistles, and they say, oh, yeah, Randy's our guy.
It's not quite like that. Sometimes it is, but I wrote a textbook. I would almost
think they contact you and you decide who you've got room on your plate for.
That sounds a little arrogant, but that's kind of more the way it is. A lot of times both sides will call me and I'll kind of look at the merits of the case.
Wow.
And I'll pick the side I want. That happens. It just happened on a very, very large case in LA. So, but I know how that sounds and I apologize for that, but that's, you asked, and that's kind of how it often works.
If you're the expert, and if it's, it's a niche or niche or whichever pronunciation we want to go with, that's your prerogative. So yeah, I don't see that as arrogant, but.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm pretty careful with the cases I take and which side I'm on. and that served me pretty well. But it's fascinating to get into the boardrooms talking about these, like going into the boardroom where all the powers to be around the World Trade Center are there at the table, and I'm invited to join the team and work on the World Trade Center. I mean, you see a lot of not just the economics of the disaster, but you see the emotional side, you see the sociological side, and frankly, how the sociological side can drive a lot of the economics. And I'm really fascinated with that intersection of things. So that I guess what I'm getting at, when you work on these very large cases, you get a little philosophical about life and destruction and disasters and how people react in the aftermath of disasters. There's a lot more to it than just crunching some numbers.
And is that part of what got you to write your book?
Post-traumatic thriving?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I became very fascinated with trauma management and what the process looks like. And I'm still fascinated with that. And we have a pretty unique research skill in the office. So we were able to do some really, I think, very nice research on, the going deep into trauma issues. The problem with the book, quite honestly, is the book's too long. And then I got the audio. I had to buy the audio version myself off Amazon. And I listened to it once. And I thought it's also got some repetitious areas. So I got to redo that book and tighten it up and shorten it up. But the information is pretty cutting edge. And it was really, I don't know if the word's fun, but it was fascinating to dig in and research that, particularly since I started writing the book as an active believing Mormon, and I finished the book out of the church. So I had to go back and redo the whole manuscript, because when I started it as a Mormon, it was very dictatorial, telling people what to do. And then when I redid it, it was more like, hey, we're all in this together. And I think, this looks like the best approach, but you decide yourselves. It had a whole different tone to it, which I think I thought it was interesting.
So you started off by trying to merge systems management with psychology.
Kind of. I don't know how much system theory got into that, but I'm the first to admit
I think it's more the attitude.
What's that?
It's kind of a Mormon attitude that we know everything, and we're the ones that tell. I mean, that's what we do as missionaries, So
yeah. And to go back and read it, when I had left the church, it was kind of embarrassing. I thought it came across very poorly. So that, but I think I turned it around, fortunately, before it's too late. Interesting to look at how people deal with trauma, because leaving, your worldview that you've had for decades is traumatic. It just, at least for me, it was.
Right.
So,
and so what was like the thing that sort of, I guess you would have been thinking about it all the time. When did you decide to write a book? What was going on in your mind at that point?
Well, I've written a number of books. In fact, I'm working on a book right now. I don't know. I'm the first to admit I'm a weird dude. I have a Houdini collection. I have a guitar collection. I'm fascinated with Leo Fender, who lived a couple streets away from me. I'm fascinated with the Mormon space. I'm fascinated with disasters, and I'm always writing books. A couple of them are good. Some of them, I'm the only one that I think ever read it. But it's just I have an eclectic interest. That's the best way to kind of put it.
And so, how long did it take to write that book?
Post-traumatic thriving?
Yeah.
Oh, gee, it took years. I mean, I really.
Right, because you wrote 2 books, sort of.
Well, I did. I wrote one book, and then I had to revamp. Revamping it went a lot quicker. Tuning the language in a more, I think, kinder way. But But yeah, it took a long time, but I'm not in a rush with them. I don't write books to make money. You know, you write a book and you make X and then you earn X, and then you know, end up with X minus Y. Y is the PR and all the, you know, costs, promotional costs, which are very, very high. So it's more of a therapy for me, I think, is the best way to put it. Or it's kind of therapeutic.
I want to know what's next. What are your plans for the future? Or if you even know.
Well, I'm doing an episode coming up on Heaven's Gate. That's all I can really say right now. I've done a lot.
That.
What's that?
Yeah.
I said we'll tease that. Wait for the next few weeks, and you'll see what he's got.
Yeah. I've been working on that for months and months. I did a lot of research into Dartmouth, and I'm still doing research in Dartmouth. In fact, I'm going back in a couple months to meet up with some other post-Mormon researchers. And I'm convinced that that's where Mormonism really started. And I'm also convinced that the church has really gone out of their way to downplay or eliminate any discussion of the Dartmouth era. And there's more information to come from that. So I'm really into Dartmouth. I'm really into the recent research. I went back into Heaven's Gate because I was kind of on the inside of things, and I knew the people that worked with them and so forth. And I got a lot of insights that have never really been shared publicly. So that I'm pretty excited about that. And then I've got these two collections that have been one's been in a museum. I'm working on getting in museums. And then I've got another book, but I'm not even ready to share the title, but I've got a pretty good feeling about it. So
it's not called Who the Hell is Randy Bell, is it?
No, that's the book after that. Maybe, I don't know. I'm always up to something, and it drives everyone around me nuts, but I love my eclectic world.
Thanks everyone for watching. It was great to have Randy on. Everybody like and subscribe, and we can't wait for Randy's episode on coming up.
The upcoming one on Mormon Stories will be about Heaven's Gate.
We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.